Descent of Satyug, the rotten state of Hinduism in the 1800s, to reform which Sri Ramakrishna took birth. Hello everyone, I am Pulkit Mathur, and in our last video we discussed that Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa took birth along with Swami Vivekananda in order to initiate the descent of Satyug, an era of peace and unity in the whole world. Now this work of transforming the era from Kalyug to Satyug is such that a portion of this work needed to be accomplished in the physical realm, and when this was done, both Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda withdrew into the subtle realm to continue forward their work from there. Now in order to understand the Herculean work Sri Ramakrishna accomplished in the physical realm to transform the social condition in India from Kalyug to one worthy of ascendancy into Satyug, we will need to first comprehend the depths of depravity into which the Hindu religion had fallen by the 1800s. Understanding this shall be the focus of this video. Once we properly grasp this sunken condition of Hindu society, along with the key reasons behind its fall, we will be in a position to properly understand the 5 critical works Sri Ramakrishna accomplished in the physical realm so as to initiate the descent of Satyug. Now I shall detail these 5 accomplishments of Sri Ramakrishna in the next video, and in a subsequent one we will visit the work Sri Ramakrishna did and is still doing in the subtle realm to bring about the complete descent of Satyug. This work has been explained by the Rishi Avatar Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya, who too came to further the descent of Satyug by reforming the fallen Hindu society back to its Vedic moral strength and vitality. Now the Rishis of course don't do the work alone, but have left a portion of it for us too, so that we too can accrue some good karma and elevate our consciousness. And this work is the work of spreading their Vedantic thoughts far and wide. There are many ways to do this, and one way is by supporting the Spiritual Bee Foundation so that the spiritual truths of Vedanta can be made available freely to one and all. My effort is not to lock up these videos and articles on the Spiritual Bee website in books or behind paid courses and lectures, but to make them available freely via the internet to everyone. This way all can use the truths of Vedanta to reform themselves and thus ascend to the high moral consciousness of Satyug. So if you want to help out, consider making a donation to the Spiritual Bee Foundation. The link to do so is in the description box below this video. With this said, let us begin this video and try to understand the utterly degraded and rotten condition into which the Hindu religion and consequently the Indian nation had fallen into by the 1800s. Now the reason for this downfall in Hinduism was that through the Middle Ages, horrific and soul-shattering customs had crept into the Hindu religion, which had not been sanctioned by the scriptures and which were in fact directly opposed to the teachings of the scriptures. These included the caste system, in which the upper caste discriminated against the lower caste or untouchables so much so as to not eat the food touched by them, so as to not allow them entry into the temples, and even in one part of India, such as in the state of Kerala, to prohibit lower caste women from wearing a garment to cover their breasts in public. Now you can imagine the extent of humiliation suffered by these women. Further discriminations included the rule in Maharashtra forcing untouchables to drag a thorny bush behind their backs so that an upper caste person walking behind them would not have to suffer the pollution of coming in contact with their footprints. In areas like Gujarat, untouchables were forced to wear a horn for identification. And in Bombay, the untouchables were debarred from wearing clean or untorn clothes. In fact, the shopkeepers took the precaution to see that before the cloth was sold to the untouchable, it was already torn and soiled. These horrific discriminations have been documented by well-known scholar and architect of India's constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Other immoral customs that prevailed included the practice of child marriage, the practice of polygamy, or the taking of multiple wives, sometimes as many as 50 to 100, as was done by the Maharajas, nobility, and even the Brahmins belonging to the Kulin sect in Bengal. There was also the ill treatment of widows, including the evil practice of Sati, where widows, especially those without children, were burnt alive on the funeral pyre of their husbands. Sati differed from the Rajput practice of Johar in that Sati was usually forced upon the widow by her relatives who did not want to pay for her upkeep post her husband's death, and found it easy to dispose her of in the name of religion, in the name of being a devout Hindu wife. Johar, on the other hand, was voluntary self-immolation performed by Rajput women in historical times to escape being raped by pillaging armies of invaders. So by the 1800s, which is when Sri Ramakrishna took birth, numerous such shameful customs which were directly opposed to the noble teachings of equality and oneness of soul of the scriptures, numerous such atrocities had crept into the body of the Hindu religion, and they had caused Hindu society to completely deteriorate, with the minds of its oppressing sections turning hate-filled, superstitious, materialistic and corrupt, and those of their victims becoming utterly subservient and fearful due to the centuries of exploitation. It was only on account of this severely degraded mental and moral condition of the nation that a handful of British found it easy to subjugate millions of Indians. And prior to the British, various Islamic invaders found it easy to rule over India for precisely this same reason. This fact has been stressed upon by many sages, including Swami Sivananda, who has stated that our own apathy, indifference, lack of patriotism, communal and caste dissensions, mutual hatred, suspicion and strife have been the main cause of our present and past degradation. To this, Pandit Sri Ram Sharma Acharya has added, "It is not that we Indians did not possess the money or the weapons or the battalions of soldiers to fight off these foreign invaders. Rather, India fell into slavery because its people had hollowed out their own society. In other words, Hindus had subjugated, ill-treated and exploited their own people so much that they had completely drained out the nation's pran shakti and consequently the quality of vivek, the ability to discriminate between right and wrong actions." This truth has been further corroborated by Paramahamsa Yogananda, who has observed that when the warriors in India lost out against foreign aggression, the businessmen, laborers and priests stood by inactive, saying, "Too bad the Kshatriyas lost. It is of course against our hereditary custom for us from the other three castes to fight." This wrong attitude is one of the reasons why India lost her liberty when the land was invaded by enemies. So we can see how the caste system prevented the Hindus from coming together and uniting as one people against a common enemy. Coupled with other unjust customs, the whole country had succumbed to such a hate-filled and prejudiced mindset that Hindus as a people could not gather the strength, stamina, willpower, foresight or the bravery to fight off the invaders. Later, it was these very prejudices, hatreds and suspicions which Hindus harbored against the lower castes and Hindus and Muslims harbored against each other, which the British later successfully exploited in their policy of divide and rule. And the culmination of this policy was that India was partitioned into India, Pakistan and Bangladesh. So we can see how Kalyug was really at its peak back then. And the condition had deteriorated so much that it necessitated the arrival of an avatar such as Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa to reform Hindu society back to the high moral values worthy of Satyug. As the saying of the Gita goes, "Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata." Whenever religion declines and wickedness prevails, I, the avatar, take birth to once again show the path to righteousness. Now, to understand how Sri Ramakrishna rescued Hindu society from the depths of depravity into which it had fallen, we will need to first visit the real reason why these atrocities and deformed customs were allowed to seep into the body of Hinduism in the first place. There are a couple of reasons for this, but for the purpose of this video, it will suffice to know two. The first and the biggest reason was that the masses had completely lost touch with the Sanskrit language in which the Hindu scriptures were written. And as a result, the ordinary farmer, businessman or housewife could not access the knowledge contained in the scriptures. Ever since the time of Buddha, the Sanskrit language had gotten restricted to the Brahmin priests and the educated elites. Because the masses could not read the scriptures directly, they lost touch with the critical spiritual truths of Vedanta, which form the firm foundation upon which the Hindu religion rests. These truths of Vedanta constitute the Gyan-kand, the knowledge portion of the Vedas, which is also known as the Upanishads. The Vedas, in fact, can be broadly divided into two sections: the Gyan-kand or the knowledge portion, containing the spiritual truths witnessed by the rishis in the exalted states of God consciousness, and the Karma-kand or the ritual and customs portion, which has been prescribed by the rishis as means to mold the mind of the ordinary masses and make it turn towards God. It is because of the presence of the Gyan-kand that the Vedas are reverentially referred to as the Shruti, or knowledge revealed directly by God. The Vedas thus are the supreme texts of Hinduism, and all other texts of Hinduism, be they the Gita or the Puranas or the Itihas or the Manusmriti, explain and further detail the Vedantic truths found in the Shruti. Therefore, all these texts are considered subordinate in authority to the Shruti and are therefore classified as Smriti. Even the Agamas and the Tantras are thoroughly Vedic in spirit and expound upon Vedantic truths only. So it is the Gyan-kand of the Vedas which is supreme, and it alone forms the backbone of the Karma-kand of Hinduism. If Hinduism is taken to be an apple, then the Karma-kand or the rituals represent its 1% outer skin and the Gyan-kand 99% of its fleshy inner core. Now, because the masses lost the ability to read the scriptures, they completely lost touch with this critical 99% of the Gyan-kand section of Hinduism and focused exclusively on the Karma-kand portion, which they saw the priests performing in the temples. The second factor which further distanced the masses from the Gyan-kand of the Vedas was the doctrine of Adhikarvad, according to which Vedantic truths could not be broadcast freely to one and all, but could be taught only by a guru to a qualified disciple. Qualified disciples, of course, were few, and the scarcity was made even starker by the discriminatory caste system, which classified lower castes as entirely unfit to receive this knowledge. Thus the masses again lost out. Now, one thing to note is that in ancient times there was value in this doctrine of Adhikarvad, because back then the Vedic knowledge was transmitted orally and a qualified disciple was therefore needed to prevent perversions and false information from entering the knowledge. But this system lost its utility as society progressed and developed written methods of knowledge preservation. So due to the masses not knowing Sanskrit and due to the doctrine of Adhikarvad, Hindus began to rely more and more upon the priests to understand Vedantic knowledge, rather than their own direct study of the scriptures. And naturally, bad elements in the priestly and upper classes took advantage of this ignorance and introduced many distorted customs to further their own power and to accord themselves more and more privileges. Some went so far as to introduce their own ideas into the secondary authority scriptures such as the Manusmriti. The supreme authority scriptures such as the Vedas and the Upanishads they dared not touch, but the lower authority scriptures they manipulated. In this way they cemented their control and perpetuated it by keeping the masses cowered in a fearful state. They propagated ideas that if one does not perform so and so ritual, God would be offended. Or if lower castes enter temples, they would pollute the place. Or if child marriage or sati is outlawed, it is insulting the Shastras, etc. In fact, when Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar campaigned to get women to attend schools and get educated, to get widows to remarry, and to ban the practice of sati, he faced tremendous opposition from the Pandits and upper castes of his time. But he succeeded nonetheless because he used the truths of Vedanta outlined in the scriptures to prove the opposition wrong. Even today we see remnants of this very same trend of justifying an unjust ritual by instilling fear in the minds of the public. We saw it recently in the dictates issued by some priests and gurus when it came to allowing women entry into the Sabarimala or the Shani Shignapur shrine. The cry once more went up, the temple will be polluted by menstruating aged women. God will be offended. Hinduism is being overturned. our Sanskriti is under threat, or that secret occult energies exist which harm women of childbearing age. All sorts of theories were invented to justify a wrong being committed and to instill fear and terror in the minds of the masses. Because the Hindu masses have never read the Gyankand section of the Vedas, because they have never read the Agamas or the Tantras, and furthermore because they have never had any spiritual realizations of their own, they easily fall prey to this type of fear-mongering by gurus and priests. It has been happening throughout our history. People forget that the central truth of Hinduism is that if any teaching, custom or ritual of Hinduism goes against the Vedantic truths outlined in the Gyankand section of the Vedas, then that teaching, custom or ritual has to be rejected, because pursuing it, a Hindu cannot attain to the ultimate goal of God realization. This truth regarding the supreme authority of the Gyankand section of the Vedas over all other scriptures has been explained by Swami Vivekananda in his lectures. Thus one really cannot profess to be a Hindu unless one understands and follows the spiritual truths of Vedanta outlined in the Gyankand of the Vedas. So to conclude this section, the ignorant masses of Hindus, lacking knowledge of the scriptures and fearing incurring God's anger and punishment, which would cause them to suffer the tortures of hell as well as a low birth in the next life, allowed bad elements in the priestly and upper classes to hijack and distort the noble teachings of the Shastras. The masses had not the knowledge of the Gyankand portion of the scriptures to stand up and oppose the depravities and injustices perpetuated by them. And since no one opposed, before long these injustices got accepted and absorbed into Hinduism. So this was the reason why Hinduism declined. As Swami Vivekananda has observed, monks and sannyasins and Brahmins of a certain type have thrown the country into ruin. Intent all the while on theft and wickedness, these pose as preachers of religion. They will take gifts from the people and at the same time cry, "Don't touch me." And what great things they have been doing. If a potato happens to touch a brinjal, how long will the universe last before it is deluged? If they do not apply earth a dozen times to clean their hands, will 14 generations of ancestors go to hell or 24? For intricate problems like these, they have been finding out scientific explanations for the last 2000 years while 1/4 of the people are starving. Do you not see that hundreds of Brahmanas and Kayasthas in Bengal now go secretly to eat dainties in public restaurants, and when they come out of these places pose as leaders of society and frame rules to support don't touchism? Must our society really be guided by laws dictated by such hypocrites? No, I say, on the contrary, we must turn them out. The laws laid down by the great rishis of old must be brought back and be made to rule supreme once more. Then alone can national well-being be ours. So it was to rectify this sorry situation into which the Hindu religion and consequently the nation had fallen, it was to weed out these atrocities and unjust customs which were stifling the tree of Hinduism, it was to add back the fertilizer of the Gyankand portion of the Vedas into the soil of the people's mind and thus restore the Hindu religion back to its Vedantic health and vitality. It was for this purpose that Sri Ramakrishna the Avatar took birth. And he did not come alone. He brought along with him a team of 16 monastic disciples, the foremost of whom was Swami Vivekananda. Now how Sri Ramakrishna went about transforming and uplifting Hindu society from its sunken state, we shall discuss this in detail in the next video. Until then, take a moment to subscribe to the Spiritual Bees daily quotes broadcast via WhatsApp and Telegram so that you too can gain knowledge of the Gyankand portion of the Vedas. The links to join are in the description box below this video. Please also note that Vedanta being an extremely vast field of knowledge, it has not been detailed in its entirety by any one particular guru. It is not that the gurus themselves did not know, they of course had the full knowledge, rather it is not humanly possible for any guru to list out each and every point of Vedanta in detail for their followers. For this reason, for the sake of completeness, I gathered together the explanations from a specific group of realized masters of Vedanta who are listed on this slide and broadcast these so that you can obtain the full and detailed knowledge. So go ahead and join, and we shall meet again in the next video.